everybody, and welcome to Pickaway County Virtual Ag Days. I'm Katarina Sharp from the Pickaway Soil and Water Conservation District, and today we are at HONEYRUN Farm with Isaac and Jayne Barnes and their employee Leif, learning a little bit about honeybees.
My name is Jayne Barnes, and with my husband Isaac, we own HONEYRUN Farm.
My name is Isaac Barnes. I'm the co-owner of HONEYRUN Farm with Jayne, my wife. Bees, ideally, they will dry the nectar enough to put a wax capping on that. All right. You can see these have not been dried down, or there's just a lack of nectar, like what we have this fall, and they haven't been capped off. Just started in here. But Leif will put this one down through the uncapper, and you can see how that works. It's got knives that vibrate, so he'll turn that on. These vibrating knives. He'll put another frame in on top of it, and it's a pretty quick process, and it just scrapes that wax right off, and the wax comes down into this sump container. There he goes. And once we get going on that stuff, it's a pretty fast process. Ideally, you have another guy standing right here, and as these frames roll out through here, the guy standing here is scraping here and getting extra wax off of there. But again, it's not a big time issue in the fall. We can be taking honey off when it's snowing if we need to. So just Leif today and me and the bees, and this is what we have. So after the frames have been uncapped down on that end, they're being pushed up through here. Once you get the wet frames, meaning the honey laden frames in here, you give it a swing. You can see how that starts to spin honey out. The honey, through centripetal force, is slung out to the sides of this big barrel and then flows down into the sump, and then it has a baffled divider where cleaner honey flows up through this into this area. And then when it comes up so high, there's a float right here, and that switches a pump. It will be pumped up the tube into this big holding tank up in the corner of the room, and that thing will hold 500 gallons of honey. And from the big holding tank, once it gets so full, we have to start filling barrels. Some of that is last year's, so some of the last year's summer honey is still in buckets and in barrels. Honey is a great product. Once you produce it and it's dry enough, it'll just sit there and be ready for you whenever. And you don't have to move them like you do tomatoes.
So this comb honey, people will just take their knife or their spoon and just dip it right in there, spread it on your toast. It's really delicate, so you can swallow the whole thing. It's all edible. Some people like to chew it like gum, and then they just spit the wax out. So what we're using here, the beeswax, is actually just these beeswax cappings that are on top of the comb honey. When we extract the honey to bottle it, we have to scrape those beeswax cappings off. And over time, scraping all these multiple combs, you just end up with lots of cappings that you can then melt down. And you melt them down and filter them, and you end up with just pure beeswax like this. And then you can melt that down and put that in the candles. You can use it as an ingredient in soap. You can make lip balms. You can, make a cutting board wax, salves for dry skin, add it to lotion. Just lots of craft projects that you can use beeswax for. So what I'm doing here is wicking the candle, and what you're looking at here the top of the mold is actually the bottom of the candle. So this is my Christmas tree mold. So the tree sits in there like that. And we just wrap up the wick on these spools, and then we wick them up through the bottom, and we use a rubber band to hold it into place, and then just a nail across the top to hold that into place, and then we pour the hot wax into the top. So what we do is we dip out of the top, because any sediment in this tank is going to go to the bottom. So rather than pouring out of this spout, we actually just ladle it out of the top. And then in about 2 hours, I'll be able to unmold that. So you can see I just poured these. They're kind of a light yellow color, so those are still really soft and hot. And over here is an example of the same candle. I can show you what it looks like coming out. So I poured this one this morning, so it's still a little bit warm. Yet this is just 100% beeswax.
So these are different soaps that we produce, and they sit here in these curing cabinets for 4 weeks. And as they sit, they evaporate some of the moisture, and then after 4 weeks, they are ready to use. And this is called cold processed soap. It's just the method, the old-fashioned soap making method. So you use vegetable oils, and you mix lye and water into the mixture, and beeswax and honey goes into the soap. We also make some with goat's milk as well. And just add different essential oils to make them smell different. And just really good moisturizing soap. The beeswax makes the bar last longer. It makes the bar harder. The different colors of the honey represents the different nectars the bees have gathered. So in the spring, when the honeysuckle and the black locust are blooming, it makes the honey a very light, delicate flavor and color. Summer, they are really visiting a wide variety of blooms, and it's just a little bit darker and a little bit stronger flavor. In the fall, the bees are primarily visiting goldenrod and aster, and that honey has a much more rich, robust flavor. Some people think it tastes like butterscotch, and it just gets a little bit darker yet. And the tulip poplar honey is from the Hocking Hills area, and it has somewhat a fig or raisin-like flavor. And the buckwheat honey would be a varietal honey, specifically from the buckwheat flowers, and it has almost a molasses-like flavor, very rich, robust, and almost a bittersweet honey. And then this is the lavender-infused honey that we use the summer honey and add dried lavender buds to the honey, and it takes on a little bit of lavender flavor. A lot of customers like to use that in tea, in their herbal tea. And the same with the lemon verbena infused honey. This we add the dried lemon verbena herbs, and it just takes on a little bit of herbal flavor, great for tea or on biscuits.
What I really love about beekeeping is just the connection that we have to nature and the seasons and everything that's going on around us. We're so much more aware of what's blooming and just the different environments, the different parts of the county have different blooms, and just watching how that can kind of show us different types of honey, and we get to taste those seasonal differences. Beekeeping is a wonderful hobby. I would definitely recommend it to anyone that has interest in honeybees at all. It's really fun. It does take a lot of research. Spend some time reading, talking to other beekeepers, just learning about it. You might even spend a year just learning about it before you dive in, so you make sure it's something you really want to do, because there is a lot of time and money to invest when you're getting started. But absolutely, it's worth it. Just a great hobby to be outside with nature, learning about the different plants and the flowers and the bees and how they all work together.
We'd like to give a huge shout out to Isaac and Jayne Barnes for giving us a tour of their farm, and thank you to all of you for joining us today.